everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. I am Mr. Warren Hayes, and I am welcoming you to another fun-filled couple of hours here on youtube.com/Mr. Warren Hayes or on your favorite podcast application where we talk about professional wrestling. Yes, that's what we do here. Thank you very much for being here. Likes on YouTube are tremendous and help out a great deal. Why don't you do one of those? 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts or 5-star ratings on Spotify help out a great deal. Once again, why don't you do that? It helps grow the podcast tremendously, and I appreciate your help. If you wouldn't mind, that would be tremendous. Now, this week's episode of the show, we've got a lot. It's essentially a lot of stream highlights where we talk about a bunch of stuff. So, because I do stream multiple times a week on the YouTube channel. So, this week is really a compilation of a lot of stuff that we discussed on stream. We're going to talk about the 500,000 streaming views that apparently AEW is getting moving forward. We're going to talk about Saraya's departure from AEW, the John Cena heel turn as well. Get my temperature on that, and a lot of topics, a lot of little things to go over. And why don't we just get started and go right ahead and start it off. Thank you all very much for being here. BJ Bethel over on SCS Scoops dropped this bombshell. AEW streaming numbers on Mac's streaming app. He dropped this on Blue Sky just as I was already streaming, just as I released the just as I got out of the countdown stream. He dropped this bombshell. I was like, okay, I'm gonna bookmark this, put this on the docket, and we are gonna read it. Now, I have not read this article yet in any way, shape, or form. So we are all discovering this together live, and you will see all my ugly thinking faces as I try to come up with analysis for this as we go on. So, benefit to those of you who have video. So again, the article is exclusive. AEW streaming numbers, parentheses, and all caps, actual numbers on Mac's streaming app. I think BJ wants, the dumbest people on earth to understand that he's not making this shit up. That he actually has real numbers here. Do you concur? Chat. I think this is it. All Elite Wrestling is averaging around 500,000 viewers for its Wednesday Dynamite show on the Mac streaming platform since the show debuted on the app this year, according to sources. Combined with live cable numbers, this would give Dynamite an average of around 1 to 1.2 million viewers per episode since it was added to the streaming service. According to sources with knowledge of the numbers, the show is averaging around 60 million minutes watched per show, with a deviation of plus minus 10 to 20%, depending on the episode and competition. The minutes watched averages to 500,000 viewers per episode live plus one, meaning it takes into account viewers who watched it live on the app and for 24 hours afterward. 60 million minutes plus minus 10 to 20% of a deviation of plus. I'm not going to pretend like this makes sense. And I go, yes, quite. I don't understand because I stink at math. But the minutes watched averages to 500,000 viewers per episode, live plus one. Live plus one meaning, like he said, live watching plus 1 day forward. In a February report, CNBC said Max expects to reach 150 million global subscribers by the end of 2026. Estimates from several companies believed Max had around 60 million subscribers in the US this year. Andrew Buchholz of Awful Announcing reported TBS had around 72 million viewers in 2023. The number is expected to be lower in 2025 due to downward trends. Late last year, sources within Warner Bros. Discovery said the company was impressed with AEW's performance on TBS and TNT. The result was a 3-year deal for around 175 to 185 million per year. AEW pay-per-view is expected to move to Max once the app has the capability to run pay-per-view shows. Sources said AEW has regularly outperformed some major hockey games on the app. NBA games on Max average around 1.7 to 2 million viewers, depending on matchups and competition. This is extremely interesting. Again, like I can't speak much on the math because I'm an English major and fuck math essentially. Look, okay, out the gate, 500,000 viewers on average for Dynamite on Max, right? Or AEW. No, Dynamite. Just plain old Dynamite. 500,000. That is way above anything that I was formulating in my brain. So much more than what I was thinking. Because I thought that this would be like, I thought this was like low six figures, very, very low. I was like, maybe some big weeks they hit 200K, like at most, but I was like, maybe 100,000, 125. See, chat is saying, that they were expecting 300K. I mean, look how much I was lowballing this. Because the weird thing is the thing that I still find curious to this point, and the reason why I was lowballing it so hard is because no one, either from Max or from AEW, has touted the Max numbers. You would think that, a show, you'd think that a show on the streaming service, if it were, performing really, really well, that if it was, going above and beyond expectations, they'd be rolling out the press releases. They'd be having the little PR Twitter accounts do their thing, put up little graphics and whatnot. And the fact that they never did that had me thinking, oh, well, the numbers are really low. That's the only explanation as to why they're not doing it. Because otherwise they would, right? Now, 500,000 a week on top of what they're getting on TV is huge. I'm not like, it's huge. Because again, that means like there's 1 million to 1.2 million people a week who are watching Dynamite, and that's tremendous. But like I told you to do my analysis, ugly faces. It's unfortunate, okay? This is what's unfortunate. It's unfortunate because BJ is working with the source, and BJ probably saw the numbers, right? BJ probably saw the numbers. He was supplied with them and he saw them, but he was told, you cannot publish these. You can't take screenshots like, this, I can give you this, but you cannot publish this because then I'm going to get outed or, whatever the fuck. It's going to put us in trouble with Max or whatever. So, and BJ is legit. He's all right. This is not Joey Votes. This is not, Fade Away Media. It's not Dr. Featherstone, whatever the fuck that guy's name is. BJ's legit. So I don't think he'd be releasing an article like this if he hadn't seen the goods for himself, right? And it sucks that we can't see it either. And now it's really a question of take my word for it, fellas. BJ says, take my word for it. I got you. It's 500,000 people watching on Max. Whereas I would love to see this data. I would love to see this data. And I bet BJ would love to release it. I'm sure. So this is what's going to happen over the next couple of days. We're probably going to talk about this again. Like peering into my crystal ball, we are going to be talking about this again this week on stream without a question, because everyone's going to start tearing this down. When I say tearing this down, like breaking this down is what I mean. Not tear. when you do a tear down, not tearing down because you just don't like something and it's like, we're going to ruin you. That's not what I meant. Like tearing something down. You do a tear down. Anyway, I should have just said breakdown. People are going to break this down. Okay. You're going to have Meltzer, who's going to get into the weeds on this. And he's probably going to reach out to some of his sources and try to corroborate what's going on. It may even be happening right now on Blue Sky, and I don't know what's going on. Brandon Thurston is going to do the same thing. Brandon's going to reach out to people, and he's going to, he's going to break things down. Joe Lanza is probably going to, like, everyone's going to start doing this. Everyone's going to start breaking. Anyone who is serious about viewership numbers, ratings talk, is going to break this down. And then they're going to come up with conclusions, and they're probably going to talk amongst themselves. They're going to bounce the math off of each other. And we're going to get some kind of, we're going to get some sort of confirmation as to whether or not 500,000 people views, I should say, is accurate or not. And here's, not views, viewers. And you have to remember, right? Like, these are viewers as opposed to households. This is always very, like, this is the more I'm thinking about it right now, and I'm just spitballing here, right? Nielsen measures households, not viewers, right? It measures households. Isn't that the difference? So can we be adding 500,000 people to the Nielsen numbers and say there's 1.2 million, 1 million to 1.2 million people watching? Is that is that a one-to-one comparison? I'm not sure. I don't know because I'm not Mr. Ratings. But we'll get some guidance on this. There will be guidance that will be made available here. But absolutely, this is going to be stuff we're going to follow up on. The main takeaway that I have here is that I am surprised, shocked that 500,000 people would be the number. I'm shocked. Not going to lie. I thought it was much, much lower. Then it makes me wonder, well, what kind of numbers do you need on streaming for people to start putting out press releases and celebratory tweets to congratulate themselves on a job well done here? Like, you can only get so many Mike Tyson, Jake Paul, viewership numbers to do that. Like, there's got to be, like, if they're beating in the NHL games, wouldn't they want to say that? Wouldn't, at the very least, like, I can understand that Warner Bros is maybe like, you know what, we don't want to make our other properties, our other deals, feel small. I can understand that. But AEW doesn't give a shit. AEW should, Mookie goes up to Tony Khan, gives him the numbers, and Tony's like, all right, and then Tony pulls out his phone and he's like, thank you to 500,000 people. Wait, hang on a second. Thank you to the 500,000 people who joined us live on AEW Dynamite last night. 500,000 people watching Dynamite on Max. What a tremendous show. Be sure to tune into Collision this Saturday. That's exactly what he should be doing, right? That's what Tony should be doing. It's surprising. I'm shocked. Let's see how this develops over the next couple of days. Let's get a little more guidance on this, because this is not going to be something that BJ is just going to be able to throw out there and go, all right, we're done. And maybe BJ will follow up on it too. But there's going to be a lot of follow up, because this is important information. This is critical information that we're just not privy to, and that we deserve to have. God damn it! Speaking of BJ Bethel, just as a follow up to yesterday on the stream where we were breaking down live his breaking article. We were breaking down live his article regarding the 500,000 on average viewers that AEW Dynamite gets on Max as a streaming program. Just to follow up on that today, if you want to hear my full thoughts, well, like I said, I got them all recorded yesterday. They're going to be on the Mr. Warren Hayes show as well. You might even be listening to this on the Mr. Warren Hayes show right now. So, it's like some weird time traveling thing that maybe some of you are a part of right now. Or I've also clipped the whole thing and I put it on my YouTube channel as well. If you want to just listen to my initial thoughts regarding the 500K, but I think we should follow up on it today because BJ Bethel was a guest on the Good, the Bad, and the Hungry podcast, which is the AEW podcast over on the Voices of Wrestling Network, hosted by Tyler Forness and friend of the show, pal of mine, Fred Moreland. And they had a chance to, they were able to grab BJ, sit him down, and ask him the hard questions. Now, there weren't really any hard questions, but they basically talked through it, and you should give it a listen if you have a chance. And it's a short little, short-ish. It's like 30, 35 minutes, something like that. But BJ gives a little more context and talks us through a little bit on how things work behind the scenes in television, particularly when it comes to streaming. He's somewhat connected in that environment, which definitely explains how he was able to get a hold of the numbers. By the way, and he said it himself, it's really hard to get these kind of numbers, or to get these numbers, period, not just these types of numbers. It's really hard to get these numbers. Like he said, there's executives who never see like this type of data because it's not the numbers that the executives are interested in. They want the big picture numbers. They want, various KPIs. They want subscriber count. They want, total income, the revenue streams. That's what they're interested in. Getting into the details as to which shows are performing better, that might not be a high-ranking executive's job. It might not be the CEO's job to know exactly specifically, how well one show is performing in comparison to another, especially when it comes to pro wrestling shows. They don't give a shit. It's more like they don't care if AEW is performing better or worse than WWE. They just want to know, they just want to know, is it performing better than what I have? Then is it performing well enough to generate, revenue, subscribers? Is it relevant to keep them on our network for these reasons? Is it working for us, essentially? One of the reasons that these numbers are hard to get by and for people to talk about, apparently, is because a lot of the people who work with these numbers are constrained by NDAs. They sign NDAs where they are 100%. Where they are 100% restricted from discussing the nature of these numbers. Like at some point in the interview, and this I thought was interesting, it's like, Tyler straight up asked BJ, and he asked him, what constitutes a viewer? And BJ essentially said, look, I've asked this question before. What is a viewer? What constitutes a view, essentially? What constitutes a view? And BJ said, look, I've asked this question before. And, is it, if you press accidentally on a show when you start watching it, accidentally, and you X out immediately, is that a view? You have to watch 30 seconds, a minute, 5 minutes, and he doesn't know. And his contacts cannot tell them because they are bound by NDAs. These are, that's exclusive information. I think the term BJ used was proprietary information, and they just can't share that stuff out. So, there's a fair chance that Tony Khan himself doesn't even see the numbers. He probably doesn't know exactly how well his show is performing because of all of the secrecy that is around the data that is collected into these systems, and which is then used by the streaming service to make their choices, right? To decide what shows get second seasons, what shows get canceled, and more importantly, how to sell ad space, because a lot of them are back on the ad grind, right? There's a lot of them that have ad supported tiers or whatnot, and now it's like, well, this is how we'll be able to sell advertising by really zeroing in on the demographics. So every streaming service, this is what BJ was advancing here, that every streaming service has different goals, essentially, right? What is ultimately their target? Is it to create buzz on the internet? That could be one thing. Is it to get shows that people will watch for the entire runtime of the show? That might also be a possibility. So there's a lot of factors that go into as it regards to, is it being successful for them or not? Is this what they've been looking for? So it's, and between Max and Netflix, they probably have very different goals. So it's very hard to point down and say, well, AEW is not as good as WWE as far as viewership goes, so it has to be considered a failure, or is it? And again, everything kind of points to the fact that it's not. And the most interesting thing that BJ Bethel pointed out when he was talking with the Good, the Bad, and the Hungry today was that was the concept here that Max is probably accounting for a lot of the cord cutting, or compensating, not according. Let me say that again. Max is likely compensating for a lot of the cord cutting that has occurred since the inception of AEW, in 2019. He stated that TNT and TBS are down to 70 million homes now, which is a considerable drop as to where they were back when AEW started in 2019. But since this year, Max is reporting 60 million, that it has now entered 60 million new homes. So it would be plausible to believe that people who did cut the cord because, for whatever reasons, because they went all in on streaming or cable was too expensive and they could still keep up with their favorite shows or leagues or whatnot via live streaming instead, via the streaming services. So he was downright questioning whether or not he was not just questioning, he was outright saying that it is plausible that a lot of the cord cutters from all the way back in 2019 are getting back into the AEW scheme because now it's easier to watch because of Max. Now, from what I understand, there's still a lot of, if I remember reading some of Brandon Thurston's latest reports on the state of the business overall, AEW's viewership has been dropping faster than the cord cutting rate, which wasn't the case before, but now it is. So can we really factor that in? I don't know. I've got two contradictory statements from two information sources that I consider to be reliable, WrestleNomics and BJ Bethel. I think I've pronounced Bethel 6 different ways since I started this segment. I think I legitimately think I've pronounced it. Yeah, I don't think I've pronounced it once the same way. I don't know. I'll figure. We know what we're talking about, and that's the most important thing. So does it really account for the losses? Well, I don't know. Maybe it would make sense to a degree, as people in the chat are pointing out, and it's significant too. since the arrival of Max, there are a lot of people, I know of some people who have abandoned the high seas to watch AEW and have been using their Max subscription to watch Dynamite because it's been a lot more convenient. So, watching AEW Dynamite illegally, I would suspect has dropped and has probably converted back into legitimate paying viewers. Again, like these are all like very much gut feelings, right? So, kind of like I was saying yesterday. And I think that it's okay to be enthusiastic about, your favorite wrestling promotion getting some W's. And I'm enthusiastic at the idea of AEW scoring big on streaming because I believe it is a company that is overdue for some big wins, and they should. And so, I'm definitely not here to put salt in your coffee or piss in your cornflakes. I should have just gone with that one, right? That's the one everyone relates to. No one wants piss in their cornflakes. In fact, I would argue no one wants piss in anything they eat in general. And I say no one as a bit of a sweeping statement because there probably is someone out there that, anyway, we're off track. The idea here, I think it's okay to be enthusiastic, but I also, I'm also I approach this with a level of caution and, just a healthy dose of skepticism instead of just going all in and cheering and doing what I'm seeing a lot of people do on Blue Sky, and that is pump their fists in the air and say, hell yeah, we're catching up with Raw. And we're like, shh, calm down. For the reason specifically being, I kind of feel that this would be reflected if there were so many people watching Dynamite. I kind of feel like it would be reflected in attendance, right? We wouldn't be running these small venues. We'd be seeing big upticks in live attendance. We wouldn't be still at sub 20,000 people for the Arlington show in July. You know what I mean? I feel like 500,000 viewers is non-negligible. That's huge. It is huge. And I kind of feel like in other aspects of AEW's business, it's not necessarily being reflected as such. So again, I want to make this clear. I'm not saying that BJ's information is false. I'm not going to sit here like some guy from New York and tell you that everything that BJ's saying is made up and that he's being paid by Tony Khan. That's nonsense, okay? BJ is super solid. A guy who's been around the block. He's been around much more than just our little stupid wrestling bubble. So he has my, I put a lot of trust in him, so that's fine. So I'm not going to sit here and do that. I'm not going to say that his information is false. What I'm going to say is, adapt it, be nuanced about it, because, again, like I said yesterday, I'm sure BJ would love, I'm sure he's seen the data, and I'm sure he would love to put it out there. I'm sure he'd like to take like the spreadsheet or whatever the fuck, the report, and flash it out there on the internet in a PDF and say, look, this is legit. But he can only get people talking about it on background. He can't put anything out there. So yes, there is a level that you have to take his word for it. Exactly. And the NDAs are involved here with the people who work for these companies. So, they don't want to get in trouble. So you can understand why all of this is going on background, but to call out, but to do the opposite and call him out as being a shill, as being a paid shill by Tony Khan, that's just, that's poisoned rot brain, from a guy who then will be surprised the next time AEW sends people to House of Glory, and then he'll act like a victim again when he's asked to not call the AEW matches, right? Like, anyway, it's not about him. I'm sorry. I shouldn't even give it air. It's too stupid. It doesn't even matter. However, when it comes to the numbers, this is what I'm trying to get to, that I want you to just use caution, use your heads, and maintain a good dose of skepticism around it, right? Like BJ said, there's huge variations in the 500,000 average, from 20% to 60% of that number, right? So it fluctuates enormously. I mean, it's a crazy ass average, 500,000 people. That's a mind-blowing average. But I think it's important to make sure that you take this as good news, because however way you want to paint it, it's good news, but it's still a little odd. There's something a little off. And I think we could only get that I think we could only clear it up if we dug into the data, but that is just not going to happen. Like, that's the issue. It's just not going to happen. We're not going to get access to the data. We're never going to, stick our hands into it. So, we take the information and do what you will with it. Again, yeah, I'm thrilled that AEW is doing great on that level, right? That is, some good PR, even though, didn't come from the PR offices. But I think everyone still needs to relax, take a couple of steps back, and not just like start trumpeting this as like, they did 650,000 total viewership on Wednesday, plus the 500,000, so that's 1.1 million. Like, we got to pump the brakes on all of this. We really have to relax. But be happy, be thrilled. I think that's good. I think that's fine. Just always remember, just keep don't go too deep in the weeds. Don't brandish a banner for this. Like, just be cool about it. Exactly like Juggernaut Bloodbath just said in the chat. I think it's a sign that the wrestling business is very strong, and that is overall a good thing. And that's ultimately what we should be truly happy about, instead of just like, this fucking wrestling war that exists in the brains of only, certain people. I asked the question in the poll here for those of you watching live on stream right now, but this is the topic that I want to get to. Is John Cena's heel turn good so far, right? We are over a month since it happened. We are well over a month since the turn. 3 consecutive weeks of John Cena appearances on the Netflix, on Raw, in Europe, where John shows up and has a bit of a tete-a-tete with Cody Rhodes, establishing why he did it, why he did the thing, and what. And we talked about it last week a little bit, right? We talked about it last week on stream. I thought so far was pretty boring. And they had another one as I'm speaking. I'm recording this on the Monday. They had one today, which I was able to watch before coming on the show, because it was broadcast from the UK. So I was able to jump in and watch it, just to get a gist of what's going on. And I've got to tell you, the only things that changed, that were different in this sequence here, in this promo off that they had this week, was that Cena wasn't able to start wasn't able to get going with his promo because Cody came out, interrupted him straight off and came out. So we didn't have John Cena talking, only to have Cody come out later. No, Cody came straight out. And there was actually physicality when Cody Rhodes hit the crossroads on John Cena to conclude the segment. But other than that, it was a very bog standard, kind of dry, very boring promo between these two guys who, as I understand, if I was paying attention correctly, are going to close out WrestleMania, which means, at least to me, means they're main eventing night 2, which is actually the absolute main event of WrestleMania, right? That's the one. I say there's 2 nights the main event, but the main event is for night of the event is night 2. That's how WWE has booked the last few to make us understand that night 2 is the true main event. I thought this, okay, as I said, I thought this was boring. And I think I'm at a point where I feel I will confidently plant my flag here and say that the John Cena heel turn is a bust. It's not bad, it's a bust. It's not working. Creatively speaking, I think this is not good. I don't think anyone is particularly excited about it. I think John Cena is extremely dull. We talked about it last week, but it came across again even this week. I don't think he's a good heel. I think Vince had it right. I think that's why Vince never pulled the trigger on it. He knew John couldn't pull it off, or that we wouldn't buy it. I think there's a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. As good as the angle was, and I'm not budging on that. That angle was terrific. What a great angle. Nothing has happened. Nothing feels exciting or fresh. And you are involved right now in the most WWE style build to a WrestleMania main event. A style that they've been doing for the past 15 years or so, where it's just babyface and heel get into the ring and sort of cut promos on each other and then go home. And then they do that week after week after week. We're just in the same territory we've always been in. And here I was told when Vince was knocked out and Paul Levesque was going to be the creative mind behind WWE, that everything was going to be so different, that things were going to be done in a different way. And up until this point, and I've said this to you all multiple times, I have not seen anything that really makes me say, oh, this is super different, because Paul Levesque learned everything he knows about running a wrestling promotion from Vince McMahon, who just also happens to be his father-in-law. So when I see this, I'm like, well, this is the Vince McMahon special. This is absolutely 100% just the plain old Vince McMahon special. I don't see anything exciting. I don't see anything that's tantalizing me, that's getting me excited. Nothing out of the ordinary. It is the most basic ass WWE build to WrestleMania you could probably imagine. And I'm not the only one telling it. Me, a WWE not enjoyer. Multiple people are, and their fan base is not excited about it. The usual talking heads that are usually so gung-ho on everything WWE does, not even them are into it. They're saying, well, man, feels a little dry this year, feels a little off this year. And again, last week I brought it up and I said, well, this, and I'm going to reiterate that point, This is a typical WWE WrestleMania build. Over the past 2 years, they were lucky to have struck gold with Cody and the bloodline angle that was able to drive the business and excitement for WrestleMania for 2 consecutive years. But now they don't have that anymore. Cody's the champ. Bloodline, whatever the fuck, it'll turn into something else, right? Whatever, but they don't have that level of excitement over the past 2 years. So these fans that are going, wow, it feels kind of dry this year. I feel like these are probably new fans who came in when the company was super hot. And maybe now they're discovering what the company is like when it's not super hot, when it's riding on its, in its usual level, on it with its usual beat. This is what WWE looks like. And I just sort of shrug and I go, well, we're back to the playbook. It's fine. Like, honestly, it's all right. So I'm not going to sit here and slam my desk and tell you that they're fumbling the WrestleMania and it doesn't matter to me. It really doesn't. I'm, as an observer, as someone who watches this from afar and has been watching around and paying attention, they're just completely out of the super hot angle of Roman and Cody that they were privileged enough to have. And now they're falling back onto stuff where they have to rebuild. They have to find something else. They have to do something else. And this is going to be the true test for Triple H. Can he recreate? Can he create, not just recreate, can he create something that will generate as much buzz and heat and interest as the past 2 years did? And let's not forget the most important part here, in case you're wondering if he can, everything that happened in the past 2 years of WWE was either within or remnants of Vince McMahon's creative. The bloodline happened under Vince. Cody Rhodes happened under Vince. And Paul was essentially gifted all of this once Vince hit the bricks. Now Vince is gone. Vince is gone. They've realized that, the bloodline stuff maybe needed a bit of a pause. I think, fans were starting to get exhausted and everyone sort of felt it. So they had to move on. We got to do other things. And now Paul is in the position. This is what he wanted. This is what he always wanted. Both hands on the wheel of WWE Creative to do whatever he wants. So what is the big fresh idea? What is the thing that we're going to do? A John Cena heel turn to challenge Cody at WrestleMania. Okay. I can see a certain amount of value in that. A triple threat? Roman, CM Punk, and Seth? All right. Sure. Jey Uso and Gunther? Up until the angle today. The angle, I don't know if you saw the angle today between Jey Uso. Good angle. I thought it was good because they finally had Gunther looking like a fucking killer again. It was tremendous. But Jey Uso, man, what a dark horse. What a dark horse to get behind. I would say that Triple H is banking a lot on, pushing old Jey Uso. I think he sees it as his project and he wants it to work. Is it going to work? Is it going to be, is Jey Uso going to be his John Cena? Or is he going to be his Austin Theory? Or is he going to be his Jey Uso, which might be something completely else, right? But as it stands right now, the John Cena turn, I don't think is working. I think it's a bust. Creatively speaking, I think it's super uninteresting. I think there's something to be said that we're not going too hard on the heel turn because John Cena is going to turn back babyface. And if that's the case, well, that's not a good idea. That's not very compelling at all. I was chatting with Garrett Kidney earlier today, And Garrett, I'm going to parrot what he said because he's absolutely right. I'm giving full credit to him. He said Cena's turn is a 100%. Cena's turn is 100% a Russo-like event where you do it for the shock value, but you really got no essence, no plan behind it. There's no substance to it. You just did it for the headlines. US front page of USA Today, bro. That's why you do it. And then there's nothing. Then there's nothing satisfying to come out of it. I 100% buy that. I think that's a good. I think it's a good comparison in this circumstance. But you want to put on your tinfoil hats for a second, folks? Let's put on our tinfoil hats for just a second, just a smidge. What if? What if this was all orchestrated by Dwayne so that Dwayne can come across looking better? Here, let me explain here. You've heard the reports, right? That the original plan was for Cody to turn heel. That's what The Rock wanted, I should say. Cody to turn heel and then fight John Cena babyface at WrestleMania, right? Cody joins The Rock, and that was the thing. But backstage politics, essentially Cody shutting it down, and then them pivoting to John Cena turning heel, and he said, hell yeah, I'll do it, right? What if from that point on, The Rock was like, look, all of these guys trying to tell me what to do, standing up to me, this is not how it's going to work. I am still the most important guy in this company. So what if The Rock orchestrated this so that Cena would end up in a spot in which he would not succeed in, that he was 100% set up to fail, so that The Rock could just go around and say, well, look, if we had done my plan, this wouldn't have happened. What if over the next 3 weeks, right? Because remember, John Cena doesn't have any announced dates. After today, Monday, March 31st, John Cena has no other announced dates for WrestleMania, right up until WrestleMania on Raw, right? Doesn't mean he won't have any, but he's not announced for anything. Well, what if over the next 3 weeks, it's The Rock that shows up to keep this feud going, to keep it alive, to keep the fire burning? And he sort of goes, yeah, all right, shaking things up. And he comes in and it turns into a success. Well, he can then say, well, of course it was a success because I came in to save it. And if it fails, it was like, well, look, if they had stuck to my plan from the start, it wouldn't have been so bad. We would not be in this position, right? What if this is all a situation where Dwayne Johnson wins again? Where Dwayne sets this up to take down his enemies? And notwithstanding, look, if you really want to go tinfoil, notwithstanding that John Cena is still working in the DC universe, and he's a pal with James Gunn, right? I don't think Dwayne and James Gunn I don't think they send each other Christmas cards anymore. I don't think they're inviting each other to their weekend villas to, play croquet and watch the game. Whatever the fuck rich people do. I don't think so anyway. I'm just saying, like, that's a little conspiratorial. I will agree. Don't put it past Dwayne Johnson for being that petty, because he can absolutely get that petty. Just saying. But look, ultimately right now, this John Cena thing, this John Cena turn is not working. And anyone who wants to talk about this being one of the greatest heel turn of all time, or one of the greatest, has got to be deflated straight off the bat. Because great heel turns will have great impact moving forward, which is why I still believe Hogan is the greatest. The Hogan heel turn is still the greatest heel turn of all time, because it completely turned the business around, tacked on easily a decade on his career that people thought was already done. And there's still a few weeks to go. But right now, the John Cena heel turn is doing nothing to create interest, excitement for WrestleMania. It's not adding anything. This is not the greatest. I think as far as shock value goes, it's a good one. It's one of the top ones. But I'd have to think about it. I have to put my mind to it and, consider what some of the greatest heel turns in wrestling are. And is John Cena, is part-timer, because here's the other thing, and I've maintained this from the start, is part-timer, end of career John Cena doing a heel turn, is that even all that compelling to begin with? If 2016, you turn John Cena, holy fuck, now you got something. Here, he's in his last year as a pro wrestler. He hasn't been he hasn't been in the company doing regular TV for years at this point. Is it that even compelling to begin with? Like Garrett said, it might just turned out to be a Russo style moment that will have the shock value, but will generate no returns. How about that? Okay, let's go over this article here because we got a bit of an update in the Janel Grant lawsuit last Friday, March 28th. We'll go through this article here, where Janel Grant's attorneys are asking to start discovery in the lawsuit against WWE, Vince McMahon, and John Laurinaitis. So I think this has the potential to be a pretty significant update. So let's update it. In the latest development in the lawsuit filed by former WWE employee Janel Grant, her legal team has asked the court to allow the case to move forward into discovery, which is the phase where both sides would turn over documents and other evidence. This is what a lot of us are hoping and waiting for, quite frankly. But the defendants, WWE, Vince McMahon, and John Laurinaitis, are resisting. Of course they are, saying it's premature. They continue to argue the case should be sent to private arbitration rather than public court, citing the arbitration clause in the non-disclosure agreement that is central to the case. It will be up to the judge, Sarah F. Russell, to decide whether discovery should begin before a decision is made about the defendant's efforts to move the case to arbitration. That would be unusual, right? Like, I'm not a lawyer, so I feel like going to discovery before going to arbitration is a little unusual, because the idea to go to arbitration or to settle out of court or whatever is to avoid going to discovery, because going to discovery means everything gets flashed out, and you can't hide anymore. There's nothing discreet anymore. Everything is out there. Grant's attorneys filed a report with the court on Friday that outlines what discovery they want to conduct and sets out a proposed schedule for the case. They've provided a list of information they want to access, including communication records from WWE. Grant is seeking records potentially from anyone who has worked for WWE. The filings state the plaintiff's request for documents, quote, may include any subsidiary and or current or former executive, employee, contractor, agent, and or similarly situated personnel of WWE, TKO, and or Endeavor Group Holdings. It's a wide net. The filing from Grant specifies that she is seeking documents related to McMahon's payments to multiple women. In addition to that, she has requested records of WWE's policies related to sexual harassment. Isn't the policy that one time when Triple H was asked, we're doing everything we can to make people safe? I think that's the policy, that they're doing everything they can. Folks, that's the policy. Grant's attorneys also indicate they want travel records submitted for McMahon, Laurinaitis, or Brock Lesnar. Grant alleges in her lawsuit that she was sexually assaulted by McMahon and Laurinaitis and that she was trafficked. As part of her trafficking claims, she alleges that sexual encounters with her were offered to Lesnar amid his contract renegotiation with WWE. In response, the defendants argue that starting discovery now could be a waste of time and money if the court later agrees to send the case to arbitration. In an email included as an exhibit in Friday's court filing, a Paul Weiss attorney representing WWE argues that local rules in Connecticut federal court allow discovery to be delayed until the judge decides whether the case will proceed in court or be sent to arbitration. Oh, well, there you go. The answer to my question came up. So it's not all that unusual. In fact, it's not unusual, basically. In a statement to Post Wrestling, Kendra Barkoff-Lamy, a spokesperson for Grant stated, quote, Janel Grant's courage continues to be an inspiration to so many. Her filing today seeks to move forward with her pursuit of justice and accountability against Vince McMahon, John Laurinaitis, and WWE for the horrific sex trafficking and abuse inflicted upon her. Representatives for Vince McMahon were contacted to provide comments. We'll update this report if they respond. I guess they haven't. Before either decisions about arbitration or discovery are made, Judge Russell will likely rule next on whether Grant's more detailed updated complaint filed in January will become the operative complaint for the suit moving forward. After a ruling is made on the amended complaint, the defendants are expected to resubmit their motions to compel arbitration. All right, there you go. Interesting little development here. I mean, you can understand why they'd want the defendants, why they'd want to push this back. They don't want the discovery to be put out there. There's probably some really embarrassing stuff out there that they really don't want to be in the eyes of the public. That's why they want to keep it into arbitration. So again, to be continued. This is where we're at still. Must not forget that this case is ongoing. So we will continue covering it as more details appear. Saraya announces mutual departure from AEW. There's no bad blood, she says. So there we go. The article on Figure 4 Online. After being on hiatus since October, Saraya confirmed today, which is yesterday on March 26th, she confirmed today that her time with AEW is now over. She called the parting mutual and said AEW will always hold a special place in her heart. Quote, "It's mutual!" exclamation mark. "But I loved my time at AEW and I had such a blast with the girls there," she tweeted. It'll hold a special place in my heart. Tony was a great. AEW was great. He was a great, and AEW was great. "I feel so lucky to be a part of this family for a couple of years. Here's to 2025. WTF am I going to get myself into now?" Oh, where everyone's wondering the exact same question. Don't worry. We're all wondering as well. Saraya is now a published author with her memoir, Hell in Boots, Clawing My Way Through 9 Lives, having been released yesterday. She's pursuing acting roles and is launching a new podcast called Rule Breakers this week. The first 2 episodes will debut this Thursday. Entertainment Weekly published exclusive quotes from the yet-to-be-released podcast's first episode. "I'm here to tell you that me and AEW's relationship has come to an end," Saraya said. "I had an amazing time there. There's no bad blood between us. I had such a magical time." Saraya felt that like there wasn't a spot for her in AEW right now and doesn't think there is much for her to do in wrestling at the moment, but she left the door open for an AEW return in the future. "That's not to say I will never come back to AEW," she said. "I absolutely love it, but I'm taking a little step back and focusing on myself a bit and putting my energy into the podcast with all the crew here." What a wonderful crew I have here. How much of a crew do you need to put a podcast together? You know what I'm saying? And she also mentioned during media interviews a potential WWE return as something she is open to in the future. She previously wrestled for WWE as Paige, holding championships on both the main roster and in NXT. AEW wrestler Harley Cameron will be among the guests on the first season of Saraya's podcast, with musician Hayes Warner, no relation, Teen Mom star Callie Lowry, and comedians Brad Williams and Joe Stapleton also set to appear. I know, I have no idea who any of those people are. I have no idea who any of these people are. So it's not a podcast for me. Saraya debuted for AEW in 2022 and last wrestled for the promotion on October 2024. On her podcast, she thanked the AEW fans and had praise for Tony Khan as a boss. So there you go. She went out through the front door to take an example, an analogy that was used for someone else. All that not too long ago. Well, all I can say is good. I mean, that's fine. That's absolutely fine with me. She let her go do whatever else she wants to do. I don't think Saraya had contributed really anything to AEW. Just a complete nothing burger, ultimately. Like what has Saraya done for AEW really that was truly compelling? That was where you're like, well, we need to hang on to her. We need to make sure that she sticks around with the company. I don't see it. I don't know what she did. She's ultimately been a net negative from the moment she showed up with that incredibly pandering promo that she did on her arrival, where she was basically patting all the girls on the head and said, and she was supposed to be a babyface here. And that is not to say that people were not excited for her. I was very happy for her to be like, okay, she's getting back into wrestling in another situation where WWE, had her do a medical update and they were like, no, you're never going to wrestle again. And she was forced into retirement when probably she really didn't have to. And then she returns and I'm like, good for her. But her matches were all not good. Never forget the Britt Baker matches, right? Those were bad. And then she sort of floundered going around doing the outcast thing, and you never quite understood the direction on that one. She teaming up with former WWE girls, Ruby Soho and Toni Storm, and you're like, what exactly are we trying to do here? And she was positioning herself as the head of the group when everyone knew deep inside Toni Storm was the better wrestler, was the better overall prospect. And yeah, the outcast was not good. Like Saraya is not, and despite being, very heavy-handed and kind of bad in everything she did, she still managed to win the Women's World Championship at Wembley Stadium and then lose it a couple of weeks after. Like, have you ever seen something more deliberate? It's like, she probably had it in her contract, And Tony's like, okay, let's do it. And then 2 weeks later, she dropped it. Wasn't that it? The whole gimmick of we're from the other place. That was so cool. I know. And that was a problem with a lot of angles in AEW at the time, if you remember as well, where you also had MJF constantly talking about going to WWE and having Bruce Pritchard's number and on speed dial and all this stuff. And we even had Ricky Starks, sometimes grumbling, It's like your guys come out, they cut the promos and no one wants to be there. You're like, well, what the fuck then? Look, I'm not sad to see her go. I really don't think she offered anything really interesting. And I think she was a net negative, and I think she's on the list of some of the worst hires that AEW has done. We've been having these discussions, right? And I think I'm going to put her up there with Kota Ibushi. And someone pointed out in one of my haunts, Alex Abrahantes. And I'm like, holy shit, Alex Abrahantes is absolutely a terrible hire. His jumping around and looking like he's not cool. Like, he made the Lucha Brothers feel less cool. hanging around Commander makes Commander feel less cool. Like, I'm sure he's a valued member of the Spanish announce team. If he still does it, I don't know. Since they got Hugo in, I don't know. But that guy's a bad hire too. Alex Abrahantes, when they started when they did you remember the Penta would cut his promo in Spanish and then he'd say Penta says, you remember that? That was kind of cool. But it just got really over the top and it just ended up annoying me. When I saw Commander and Hologram in Arena Mexico last week, I was like, oh my God. Abrahantes wasn't there. I was like, what a breath of fresh air. Wasn't hanging around Commander. Maybe they saw, maybe the CMLL brass saw Abrahantes and were like, nah, he doesn't have to come. He doesn't have to come. So, I mean, good for her. And honestly, I'm glad that this is ending how it's ending, drama-free, no vague tweeting anymore, no speculation, no people getting upset. Now, if the WWE fans want her back, they can have her back. I think they're delusional if they think she's coming back with her old theme because it's a CFO's theme. She's going to get, because the theme songs are very important to WWE fans. The entrances are critical. I think, if she does come back, you have to think about that. Let her go have cute little matches, cute little appearances, have her show up at the Royal Rumble, all this shit, Fine. It's fine. So how about we talk about the Owen, the 2025 Owen Hart Foundation Tournament. It was revealed over the weekend on Collision that the brackets for the Owen were going to be announced on Dynamite this week. So if you're watching this stream live tomorrow, if you're listening to this on the podcast, there is a very good chance that this is already old news. So feel free to skip over this part. But I did want to talk about it a little bit. The brackets for the men and women's tournaments are going to be announced on April 2nd, on the April 2nd edition of Dynamite, like I just said. The respective winners will get a world championship title shot at AEW All In Texas on July 12th. Many entrants are still unknown, says this article provided to us by Post Wrestling. Despite several women declaring during Saturday's episode of AEW Collision. Mercedes Moné, Athena, Billy Starks, Jamie Hayter, Chris Statlander, and Thunder Rosa. On the men's side, announced so far are Will Ospreay, Hangman Page, and Jay White. So that's where we're at right now as far as the brackets go. But let's start with the women. In that regard, we have six women. We have six women that have declared. So correct me if I'm wrong here, but technically there's only two more women that are going to be announced for it, right? Because we've got, isn't the Owen like just usually an 8-person tournament? I don't remember. Let me Owen Hart Tournament. Let's say 2024. Go to the Wikipedia. 2023 though, we were at 8 people, and 2024 as well, we were at 8. And same thing with the men. So I would expect then that I would expect that this is what you're going to do moving forward. That for the women, like I would expect that we're going to go back to that. We're going to still do 8 participants, and then the women. So the women basically have 2 more spots to declare. So it's very interesting right now. I think it's really interesting that Mercedes and Athena are in here. Billy Starks, Jamie Hayter, Chris Statlander, Thunder Rosa. Who are the 2 that, have not declared yet or will. So, I think that since they're announcing the brackets for this week, for this week's Dynamite, I think you can exclude, for both the men and the women, you can exclude the challengers to the world titles, right? So Megan Bayne is not going to be in the Owen, and Swerve Strickland is not going to be in the Owen. Because otherwise, why would you do that? You're giving up the spot, right? You're giving up the match. Or if Toni Storm is in it too, you're like, well, no, then that doesn't make sense. You're just giving up the tournament. You're just giving up the results, of pay-per-view matches this weekend, and that doesn't make sense. So who would we have left on the women's side? Do you go with Serena Deeb? Is this where Britt Baker makes her comeback? Her big return to AEW programming? There's a lot of chatter around Britt and what her next moves are going to be. Your guess would be as good as mine on that front. If I were booking this, I'd throw Harley Cameron into it, even if she gets eliminated early. We had the Harley Cameron discussion not that long ago. You need women. Tony needs to put on TV people who are over, and he's been, and Harley is over, and she's been on Collision pretty systematic, right? And sometimes once in a while you got to put her in a match too. She just can't be running around doing Harley Graham all the time. She's got, you got to put her in the ring. You got to have her do some things. Why not that? I think that would be interesting. I'd be surprised if Britt is added, quite frankly. I'd be surprised. Oh, Mina's a good call, chat. Oh, Mina's a very good call. When is she up with Stardom? We talked about this, right? I can't remember. So her contract expires at the end of the month. Guess what? This was reported on March 26th. So guess what? Guess what, folks? It's a new month. So we could very likely see Mina Shirakawa in the tournament. That's very interesting. Yuka? I don't know, man. Maybe like if they want someone who can easily, I don't want to sound rough here, but someone who can easily take a loss in the tournament, sure. Assuming Bayne doesn't beat Tony at Dynasty, I assume she'll be in the 0-2. No, that's the point. Is that since the tournament brackets are being announced on Dynamite this week, and the pay-per-view is on Sunday, like unless they do a mystery bracket and then it turns out to be Megan Bayne, which is a kind of a lame reveal. Not because I don't like Megan Bayne. It's just like, when you have surprise entrants, you kind of want to be surprised. I don't think anyone would be all that surprised. Like, they're not going to announce Megan Bayne in the Owen because that's going to give away the finish to the pay-per-view match this weekend. Riho would be cool. How long has it been for Ruby Soho? I mean, sure. She's going to come back at some point, right? I mean, you just need someone for the tourney. We've got Deanna, Taya, Deeb, Camille. Sure, there's a bunch of people you can go through. I think there's a reason why Willow's not in it, which is weird because she didn't win last year. It was Mariah May who won last year. What am I talking about? But it's kind of weird because Willow is so well liked, but I think they have something planned for Willow. I think she has a plan. With the we'll see how it all shakes down with the mixed gender match that they're doing on Dynamite this week. But I look at this setup right here. Mercedes, Athena, Jamie, Chris Statlander, like those are 4 women who all reasonably you could make a case for winning the tournament. You could all reasonably make a case for any of those 4, right? So it's interesting Who else can you add in the tournament that will not take away from the possibility of these 4 women winning, you know? I think there's a reason why, let's say, for instance, Julia Hart hasn't been announced ahead of time too, because Julia Hart is rather protected, right? She's substantially protected overall. So they don't want, I would assume that they just don't want to throw her to the wolves and have her lose in the first round, right? But I mean, this is actually really fascinating. It's really, really fascinating to me how this works out. And the only way I see this, like, not the only way, but like, I guess the most obvious way that you see this working out, if you want indeed to run Mercedes versus Athena at Y'all In, it's to have Mercedes and Athena both cost each other shots at winning the tournament, right? So maybe Mercedes does something to cost Athena her spot in the tournament, or to keep her from advancing, I should say. And then Athena does the same to Mercedes Moné later on in the tournament. Because unlike, excuse me, because unlike the Continental Classic, no one is barred from ringside. So you can have all the shenanigans you want. And I kind of think that this might be, a situation where this type of interference is going to help promote harsh feelings for a bigger match down the road for Mercedes and Athena. I think that's a match everyone wants to see. Then again, if you look at the setup here, what's the match that everyone wants for Toni Storm then? Do we want the Jamie Hayter rematch? There's a legit story there. There's the injury. There's a lot of weight to that rematch. Do we go with Chris Statlander, which would be a terrific match also? I think the booking here is very interesting, but I think they're going to find a way to get Mercedes and Athena out of the tournament somehow, so that they can focus on their own program for Y'all In. That's what I think. That's kind of what I think would be the path here. I think Sky Blue just got cleared. Well, Sky Blue might, sure. I mean, like there's a lot of good possibilities here. Do you put Sky Blue in here to be back from injury, to be eliminated in out of the first round? In the first round, just be kicked out immediately. I don't know if you want to waste a return on that. I wouldn't. The fans like her. Yeah, I mean, I think that's. I'm going to be very, very interested in see how this goes down, and I can't help but think that Mercedes and Athena are going to find a way to knock each other out of the tournament, or you could also have Mercedes and Athena have a match against each other in this tournament, and then someone goes over and the other one gets pissed off. And you can still build then to a match at Y'all In. You could even have a little pit stop match at Double or Nothing between the two, and have it culminate, the rubber match at Y'all In. Why not have a good, solid program like that? That could be a lot of fun too. But yeah, like I look at the women already involved, and it's like there's legitimately 4 people in this tournament that you can make an argument that they could go all the way and face Toni Storm for the world title. I think it's absolutely a thing. Jamie versus Mercedes in the final of the Owen. Athena cost Mercedes the match, so it's Athena versus Mercedes and Jamie versus Toni at All In. See, perfect. That I can buy that booking. I can buy that. And like I said, you can even have an Athena Mercedes match at Double or Nothing if you wanted. You absolutely could do that. On the men's side, we only have 3 guys that have been announced: Will Ospreay, Hangman Page, Jay White. No, you can be in the Owen multiple times. You know, it's not because you've been in it once that you are forbidden to be a part of it. No, so we've got Ospreay, Hangman, and Jay White right now, who have all been announced. Like I said a few minutes previous to this, I think we have to come to grips with the fact that Swerve is not going to be in the tournament. If they announce him for the tournament, then they're telegraphing the finish of the pay-per-view this Sunday, so they shouldn't do that. I don't know. There's a lot of really interesting possibilities that you could throw in here, right? There's a lot of people that you could still add to the on the men's side, and I don't necessarily want to run down all the possibilities, but Chad, I would love to read read what you have on your mind. Bring in Hechicero and have him move into round 2 or something. But I am still very bullish, very, very, very bullish. And we're going to do our Dynasty preview on the Thursday stream this week. So be sure to be there. But I'm very, very bullish at the idea of Will Ospreay being the guy who goes to Y'all In to fight Jon Moxley. And I know it's something that tons of people don't want to hear. I know it's funny how, anything that isn't involving Swerve Strickland and Hangman Adam Page is a very unpopular opinion right now. I know I'm aware of that, but I'm still very bullish on Moxley holding on to the title at Dynasty, and then moving forward, going into even through Double or Nothing, and finally Ospreay being the guy to take the title off of Mox. That's what I think happens, right? Because the idea, there's something that I just can't shake. There's one thing that I just cannot shake. It's Hangman Adam Page saying that, bringing back to the forefront that he will never let Swerve Strickland be world champion again, kind of thing. And that's a seed that's been sown of their, eternal feud against each other, which is great. I love it. Somehow, I think Hangman is going to be somehow responsible for Swerve losing the title at Dynasty this weekend. Here's a little preview of the preview. Whether it be direct interference, or there's going to be something where Swerve is going to be able to point his finger directly at Hangman and said, I lost and it's your fault. And Hangman is going to be maybe at the end. Maybe he'll make it to the end of the Owen. Maybe we'll get Hangman versus Will in the finals of the Owen, which in all honesty would fucking rule. I'd be so into that. Two guys who are incapable of having bad matches. Sure. I'm fine with that. And yet somehow, the Hangman, not somehow, but Hangman loses because Swerve came in for some payback and made sure that the Hangman lost, which would lead us then to Y'all In with Hangman Adam Page and Swerve Strickland ready to tear each other to pieces again, which I think is a match a lot of people would like in the stadium setting. Is it the best possible outcome? No. I wouldn't have these guys touch each other for a while still. I think I'd skip the entire 2025 cycle without having Hangman and Swerve be at each other, I feel like. But it's also probably the best secondary thing to do with both of these guys, as it stands today, to have them fight each other at All In, unless without putting them into the main event. Because again, I can't emphasize enough how much I think it's Will Ospreay who's going to do it. He's going to fight Jon Moxley. He's going to be the guy who's going to take down Jon Moxley. He's going to be the guy to pull out the title out of the briefcase and get it all shinied up and show it to the world again. I think that's how it goes. You know, I know a lot of people are turned off by the Death Riders angle. And you know, outside of the indefensible main event of Revolution this year, I thought they did a really good job at turning the Death Rider angle around, pivoting from whatever it was, or maybe even what it was supposed to be today. And I think Mox looks motivated. I think he's in his element. It's starting to feel good again, because it wasn't feeling good for a while. And what Mox needs in this championship run is big championship defenses. You know, which I've been hammering this argument home since we've started, but he has not had a proper, strong title defense against a guy that is perceived by the AEW audience as a top guy since he won the title. Orange Cassidy, not a top guy. You know, the four-way is a mess. Adam Copeland, not perceived as a top guy by AEW fans. But let's say he defends against Swerve Strickland this weekend. Swerve is absolutely seen as a top guy. Darby Allin, let's say he comes back, because I think that would be a good little defense if Darby survives the mountain and is back in time for Double or Nothing. I think that's a good little pivot. And Darby is beloved, and you know, people want to see him as a top guy. And he plows through Darby, and it's tremendous. Then he gets to Y'all In. He loses to Will Ospreay. And at least he's got a couple of big, hot AEW guys to stand up against. And I think that's what this title reign needs. I don't think it's been as bad as people want to make it out to be. A lot of people are, you know, literally are very, very, very down on it and have turned on Mox. And I'm still not ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And look, I might be getting ahead of myself on the preview front, but I think that Swerve winning the belt off of a 2-week build, you know, for this pay-per-view isn't doing him much justice either. Like, I think he's more deserving than that too. I really feel like Dynasty is going to be a pay-per-view that is going to set the tone for the promotion all the way to Y'all In July. I really feel like that's going to be the direction they want to go with this. I think there's going to be a lot of storytelling bumps. I think it's going to be a very story-heavy pay-per-view leading into the big stadium show. I think they want to get their ducks in a row from that point on. I think the picture will probably become clearer. I really think that's what they're going to do. So, you know, regardless of who else they book in this circumstance here, I think this is our main. That's the Owen finals right there. I think it's Will Ospreay and Hangman Adam Page. I think though that's our finals. That's how everything wraps up. And somehow, you know, Swerve is going to get involved, and he's gonna cost Will the finals. Not Will, excuse me, Page the finals, and Will's going to move on. As far as I can tell right now. Now, this is the obvious path. I think it's an obvious path. AEW sometimes doesn't exactly have the take the obvious route and will surprise us with something else. So, you know, I'm still very open at the idea of Swerve Strickland winning the belt this weekend, although I think it's really improbable. I think it's highly improbable, in fact. But I can still see a scenario where that happens. And then is your main event back to being, so let's say Swerve does win the title this weekend and he goes to All In. I think I think the finals to the Owen still remain Will Ospreay and Hangman Adam Page. So which guy goes forward? Do we get the rematch? Well, whatever happens, it's going to be a rematch. But do we get the lifelong feud between Hangman and Swerve, or do we get a rematch from last year with Ospreay and Swerve? I'm just saying, just thinking out loud. I think the booking is very interesting. Like it's going to be very, very, very interesting to see how all this unfurls. And there's a very fair chance that I'm completely 100% off base. Every time I try to, do predictions, I do bracketology for the New Japan Cup or whatever, I stink, so maybe you shouldn't be listening to me, here's one thing that I've overcome is I've overcome AEW, doing things strictly in the ring in a pro wrestling environment without any shenanigans. This is no longer that company. They are not afraid to use outside interference and so on and so forth. So there was a time where I was like, no one's interfering in Hangman Page versus Will Ospreay when that happens. Now I'm like, no, it could happen. It could absolutely on TV, absolutely. On the pay-per-view, I'm always a little more. I'm a little more colder at that idea because I feel it doesn't happen all that often. But on TV, absolutely. So it's like, well, I'm factoring in possible story bumps coming via interference and chicanery. I think that's entirely possible. I think that's 100% possible. So that starts this week on Dynamite. It's a strong start. There's the strong people already involved, and on the women's side, there's a lot of openings. It's it's a very interesting start because, like I said, there's 4 out of these 6 women who have already been announced who you can plausibly make an argument to move forward and win the tournament. On the men's side, well, look, I mean, it's still weird to think that Jay White is like a secondary actor in this, but maybe that'll change. I don't know. But Paige and Ospreay, I think that's our final. I think that's the final to the tournament. And that about does it for another edition of the MrWarrenHayes Show. Thank you all very much for tuning in. A reminder that, every Thursday I do an AEW Dynamite review. So that will be coming up on Thursday. If you're already subscribed to all of this, you won't miss it. If you aren't subscribed, you are going to miss it because you will probably forget unless you set up a little post-it. But I think the easiest thing to do would be to just subscribe to the YouTube channel or to the feed wherever you listen to your podcast. Just subscribe to that. That's the best way to make sure that you don't miss out on a thing. And plus next week, it's going to be a lot of reviews. We're going to be reviewing, of course, AEW Dynasty, but New Japan Pro Wrestling's Sakura Genesis is also happening this weekend. So big, busy weekend in professional wrestling that I will be here to cover and watch and share with you afterwards. There you go. I don't know what to add at this point. Thank you again very much for being here. I appreciate your patronage tremendously. Go watch some Randy Orton and get back to me, and I will see you next time.